Today, I effed up by buying everyone an Ancestry DNA kit and ruining Christmas. Earlier this year, Ancestry DNA had a sale on their kit. I thought it would be a great gift idea, so I bought 6 of them for Christmas presents. Today, my family got together to exchange presents for our Christmas Eve tradition, and I gave my mom, dad, brother, and 2 sisters each a kit. As soon as everyone opened their gift at the same time, my mom started freaking out. She told us how she didn't want us taking them because they had unsafe chemicals. We explained to her how there were actually no chemicals, but we could tell she was still flustered. Later, she started trying to convince us that only one of us kids need to take it, since we will all have the same results, and to resell extra kits to save money. Fast forward. Our parents have been fighting upstairs for the past hour, and we are downstairs trying to figure out who has a different dad. Thank you so much for all the love and support. My sisters, brother, and I have not yet decided if we are going to take the test. No matter what the results are, we will still love each other, and our parents no matter what. And then, an update. Christmas isn't ruined. My situation actually turned into a Christmas miracle. Turns out my sister's father passed away shortly after she was born. A good friend of my mom's was able to help her through the darkest time in her life, and they went on to fall in love and create the rest of our family. They never told us because of how hard it was for my mom. Last night, she was strong enough to share stories and photos with us for the first time, and it truly brought us even closer together as a family. This is a Christmas we will never forget. And yes, we are all excited to get our test results. Sometimes the unexpected leads us somewhere better than we imagined. Welcome back, everyone. We're here together tonight with stories from the Today I Effed Up subreddit, with calm Minecraft gameplay in the background. If you have any subreddits you'd like to hear stories from in future videos, go ahead and leave those suggestions in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this format, a like and subscribe would mean a lot. Let's continue with the next story. This one's about living with a small problem for way longer than necessary. Today I effed up by living in a dark bedroom for 6 years. The overhead fan in our bedroom uses one of those compact halogen light bulbs. 6 years ago, the bulb burned out and got really dim, just barely aglow. I bought a replacement bulb, but when I put that one in, it was also barely lighting up, so I realized the unit was bad. The fan still worked great. It literally is the best fan I've ever had because it moves a ton of air and is super quiet. The fan had also been a gift when we moved into our house. The unit cost over $400, so I didn't really want to replace it, even though our bedroom doesn't get much natural light. So it is pretty dark. So since then, over the years, my wife and I have had to make do with no overhead light. We open the windows during the day, and at night use a combination of bedside lamps and the bathroom light. It's never really as good of lighting as an overhead lamp, so I keep some flashlights up there for when we are cleaning or looking for something. After 6 years of living in the dark, this winter I just decided I would replace the damn thing. But before I did, I decided to try one last time with another bulb because, however unlikely, it's possible both bulbs I had tried were bad. So I'm up there installing the new bulb, grab the remote, the fan has a remote, and as I'm turning the light on I realize the thing is dimmable. For 6 years we lived with the inconvenience of no overhead light, and the whole time it was just because the thing was set to dim. 6 years, just like that. You can just listen along. We'll take the next one slowly. Today I effed up by lying to my wife for 13 years. My wife hates orange and lime-flavored candies. I love them. Well, love the orange, like the lime. So, she passes on the orange Starburst to me. She passes the orange and green Skittles to me. She passes the orange and green gummy bears to me. This has been happening for 13 years. What she doesn't know is that the green Haribo gummy bears are actually strawberry. Shortly after we married, for one reason or another, I looked at the back of the Haribo gummy bears package and discovered this. So I haven't said anything for 13 years. Every time we get gummy bears, she gives me the orange and green strawberry. I've never said a word. I've enjoyed eating my little lies. Until last night. We had some gummy bears and she opened them and she started to hand me the orange and green ones. But after a few minutes, I saw her looking at the back of the bag. Then I saw her eyes get real big. She turned to me and asked if I've known that the green bears were strawberry. She always thought they were lime. I was honest and nodded my head yes. The look of betrayal was unreal. She asked how long I've known, and I was honest. I told her as long as we've been married. She quit giving me the gummy bears she didn't like. She was even eating the orange ones out of spite. I don't think I'll get any more gummy bear discards after this. Time to buy my own. We don't eat these every day. A few times a year at most. I don't just get the rejects. It's a shared bag. Whenever she grabs a few, she would pick out the orange and green and hand to me, just like I would give the pineapple to her. 13 years of strawberry gummy bears. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have said something right away or just enjoyed the extra candy? Whenever you're ready, we'll continue. Today I effed up tipping 140% to a pizza delivery driver. My buddy and I ordered a pizza last night. Unaware that I already paid with my debit card, I walked to my door with $30 and gave him a 20% tip on top of that which had been paid online. The driver was about in his mid-30s, barely spoke English, and he was driving a beat-up car. He said thank you very enthusiastically, which made me realize in about 2 seconds that I just gave him double the money for the order, which he would obviously receive as a tip. I was about to admit my mistake and ask for the money back, before I saw his reaction while he was walking to his car. He had a smile from ear to ear like he found a cure for COVID or struck gold or something. He even did this little mini jump before he hopped into his car. I'm not exactly Bill Gates, I still have debts to pay, but I'm glad I messed up to help someone who needed the money more than I did. Anyways, I felt pretty dumb after, but the joy I saw in that man made my week. Not a very interesting story, but it was pretty cool for me, as my dad moved to Canada from across the world with only a bike and a few $100. Sometimes the mistakes we make turn into the best moments of our day. Let's move to the next story. This one's a bit longer, so we can take our time with it. Today I effed up by pretending to be deaf for the entire quarantine. So, 3 months ago, or whenever it was that the quarantine started, I started an online course for a few subjects. To provide some background, these aren't my school classes or anything, and I've never met these people before. There are maybe 10 other kids in class, and the teacher is actually pretty great. So the first 2 days go pretty well, but on the third day I messed up big time. We were in between a physics class that had already been going on for an hour, and I'd completely gotten distracted halfway through. I have an incredibly low attention span, and this was already too much for me. When the teacher called my name to answer his question, I had no idea what he'd been talking about, so I tried to Google it. However, I have bad internet, so it took like really long to load, and the teacher was getting upset as to why I wasn't responding and why I was typing. So, completely freaking out, I decided to text him on the Google Meet chat and make an excuse that my laptop's audio and microphone are not working today, and I've been reading the subtitles which take quite some time to load, so I hadn't quite gotten his question. In my immense panic, I phrased this somewhat vaguely and said, I can't actually hear, I've been reading the subtitles, they take quite some time to load. To which the instructor said, oh, I'm so sorry, I wasn't aware that you are deaf. In my intense panic and anxiety, I just went along with it, dumb as anything. It actually worked out fine. I type out all the answers sent to me and even bought a hearing aid that I sometimes wore in class. Now I say sometimes because I don't actually have the focus and commitment to remember to put it on every class. When asked about it, I told the people in class that even with the hearing aid, I can't hear much, so I don't usually bother wearing it. They bought it. Everyone in class likes me a lot now too, and they find me very endearing. There's a girl, Carla, who says I have the most beautiful smile she's ever seen. So this was actually going really well for me. But like most of my antics, this backfired on me big time. When I made this decision all that time ago, I was sure I'd get away with it. We were never going to meet in real life. However, about a week ago, the instructor decided to meet in real life as the lockdown in my country has been lifted. I spent all night watching videos of deaf people and trying to figure out how to behave. I decided to pretend to also be completely mute so I wouldn't have to try to speak like them. It seemed very hard and I didn't want to try. So anyway, we meet up and everything goes well. No one uncovers my secret or anything. I spend the entire in real life meet with Carla, who is completely stunning in real life. She's smart, she's funny, she's kind. We keep handing each other notes on tissue papers, and it's the cutest thing ever. I haven't ever been this attracted to anyone in my entire life. Toward the end of the meet, however, Carla hands me a tissue paper with one little heartbreaking sentence on it. Will you date me? Panicking, I tell her I need some time to think, and she's chill with it. I'm supposed to be meeting up with her tomorrow. I can't pretend to be deaf and mute while dating her. It's impossible. But if I have to keep this charade up, I'll have to let her go, and I don't want to do that either. There's also the other option where I tell her it was all an act. Best case scenario is the extreme embarrassment plus amazing girlfriend, and the worst case scenario is she thinks I'm a jerk and I lose her anyway. She just texted me what time to pick her up. The date is actually tonight, not tomorrow, so I have way less time to make this decision than I expected. I'm like a disaster that keeps on happening. Anyways, you should have an update in about 6 to 7 hours, which is when I'll meet her. And then, the update. So this is the update. I just got back from the date with Carla. So basically, I prepared really hard for the date, Googled what the appropriate flowers for apologizing for your lies are, and got her white orchids. I then put on my best clothes and set out. She'd come to the date with a cute little notepad and 2 pencils for us to write notes in, which melted me instantly, but I was so anxious and nervous that at first I couldn't bring myself to tell her. But as we sat waiting for our order to arrive, I kind of snapped because of guilt and scribbled down into the notebook, "Hey, there's no easy way to break this, but I'm not actually deaf or mute." To which she replied with, "I know you're not deaf, but you are pretty dumb," with a smiley face. At which point I said, "What the heck," out loud. She then laughed and explained that she'd thought I was so cute that she'd Googled me long ago and found my Instagram, which has highlighted stories from concerts where I'm screaming and vibing. So she only asked me out to figure out for how long I'd keep it going. So she was actually playing me the whole time. I was feeling pretty bummed that she only wanted to date me for that, but nevertheless I apologized profusely and showed her the Reddit post to explain myself. Best move ever. She found the post funny and cute and adorable. I told her I totally understand if she wants to end the date now, but she didn't. We had a great time and aren't officially dating or anything, but we did set a second date for next Wednesday. She also told me that while she understands why I did what I did, and that anxiety, especially social anxiety, is so hard to deal with, but she also believes that I was a little offensive, especially with the hearing aid. She explained to me why that was so insensitive, and I'd like to apologize for anyone I might have offended. It really wasn't my intention. Also, for our second date, we're planning to volunteer at a center for deaf kids so I can redeem myself. Sometimes honesty comes at just the right moment, even when it feels impossible. We're going to take our time with these stories tonight. There's no rush. My parents have a 39-year age gap, and I've never told my friends the truth. My dad was born in 1925 and my mom in 1964. Because of the massive age gap, I was so embarrassed as a kid that I lied to everyone and said he was my grandfather. He passed away 12 years ago, and I still haven't corrected the lie. Most of my long-term friends still think I lost a grandfather, not my father. It feels like I've erased his real role in my life just to avoid the gross looks and the math people do when they realize he was 40 when my mom was born. I feel like I betrayed him by being ashamed of him until the very end, and now it's too late to take it back. That's a heavy thing to carry around. 12 years is a long time to live with that kind of regret. You can understand why a kid would feel uncomfortable explaining that situation to their friends. Kids just want to fit in. They don't want to deal with questions or judgment about their family. But looking back as an adult and realizing you never got to honor your dad publicly, that you essentially erased his role in your life just to avoid awkward conversations, that has to sit with you in a really difficult way. And the thing is, there's probably no good time to correct it now. 12 years later, how do you even bring that up? Hey, remember my grandfather who died? Well, actually that was my dad. It would open up a whole new set of questions and conversations, so they're stuck with it, carrying both the original shame and now the guilt of never having corrected it. It's one of those decisions you make as a child to protect yourself that ends up following you for the rest of your life. Grief is complicated enough without adding that layer of feeling like you denied someone's place in your life, and you can't go back and fix it. You can't tell him you're sorry. That's what makes it so hard. Let's move to the next one. I used an exploit to steal from my first job and was never caught. I used to work for a store here in the USA that's popular in rural areas. You see this store everywhere. Sometimes 2 locations will be a mile apart on the same road. Where I lived, there were 5 locations in a 2-mile range. I worked the register most nights while the lead would be doing whatever it was she did. Sometimes we had sales, and they had a manual code you would type for the items on sale. That code was different every time. One day I hit the wrong button, and the code took 90% off instead of 25% it was meant to. The lead came up and helped me fix the transaction, but I remembered the code and wrote it down and shoved it in my jacket pocket and forgot about it. About a month later, I found a paper in my pocket. I tried the code again at work that night, and it worked. The codes had changed, but this one stayed as 90%. After thinking about it almost all night, I decided to go with a friend and see if we could get an employee at another store to use the code. So we grabbed a few items and went to check out. After she rang up our stuff, I told her I had a code. She paused for a minute, but I said I worked at the store closer to town, and she didn't say anything else and typed it in. Sure enough, it worked. I spent the next week at work waiting for someone to say something, but it never happened. I thought for sure that woman would say something, but she didn't. About 2 weeks later, I went back and did the same thing, but this time I had more stuff. I told her the code and she accepted it, and we went on about our day. I was feeling really good after that, and I relaxed. No one was gonna know. So I started buying everything there. A whole cart of food, clothes, cleaning supplies, you name it. If I saw that same cashier in there, I would load up because I knew she wasn't talking. No one other than my mother was suspicious of it. A full year, I'm pretty sure we got 5 or 6 grand worth of free stuff easy. After a full year of doing this, the code stopped working. I guess they discovered the code and removed it. I was in the process of moving and had quit by the time it stopped working, so I wasn't worried about being fired for it. I used to feel guilty about it, but now that I'm much older, I was 18 or 19 when this happened, I actually don't feel bad. This company has been caught doing so much illegal stuff and not paying employees correctly that I don't care. I won't even shop at their stores, even if there's one on every corner. It's interesting how people justify things to themselves over time. At first there's that nervousness, that constant waiting to get caught, checking over your shoulder, wondering if today's the day someone says something. And then when nothing happens, it becomes routine. It becomes normal. The fear fades and it just becomes something you do. And then years later, they've completely reframed it in their mind. They learn things about the company, about how it treats employees, about illegal practices, and suddenly the guilt disappears. It becomes almost righteous in their mind, like they were getting back at a corrupt system rather than just stealing because they could. Whether that makes it right or wrong isn't really for us to decide. It's just one of those confessions where someone did something they knew was wrong at the time, got away with it completely, and now looks back with a totally different perspective. The human mind is really good at making peace with the things we've done, especially when we can find reasons to justify them later. But you have to wonder about that cashier who kept accepting the code. Did she know something was off? Was she just trying to be helpful to a fellow employee? Or did she get in trouble when they finally discovered the code and traced back all those transactions? We'll never know. Let's move to the next one. This one's heavy. Terminally ill and racking up credit card debt with zero cares to give. I've had cancer for 2 years now, did chemo, lost my leg, beat odds and managed to even go back to work. Well, things hit the fan and treatment stopped working. Probably got weeks, maybe couple months at best. I am 22, don't own a house, don't own my car, have maybe £2,000 in the bank. So I took out a credit card, 6.5 thousand limit, 0% APR for 20 months. I was previously building up a good credit score and am now buying whatever I want. The debt will die with me and I give no cares. And if you want to beef me about driving your bank fees up with this behavior, at least you get to live. Edit. Thank you all for your amazing responses. Unfortunately, it's bone cancer that has spread through my whole body, so I'm too weak now to travel far, as much as I would have wanted to see the world. I'm going to go bigger and do some good stuff, if you have ideas. I want to do some big donations to food banks and cancer charities that supported me through my journey and make some differences before I pop. Also, shame on all of you asking me for money. Update 2. Took out some more cards, thanks for the suggestions. Some of you asking, I'm a girl. I've bought lots of things for my family, mostly sentimental things with my handwriting on. I bought a crab at a fancy seafood place. That was awesome. I've donated to animal shelters and food banks. Also to the cancer charities who helped drag my backside through this. Also, can you all stop telling me to find Jesus? I respect those of you who are praying for me, because I know that's your way of thinking of me, and I'm really touched by that. But finding God is in no way in my plans, and not what I believe will happen after death. Trying to force religion down a dying person's throat is really not the vibe. Update 3. Still hanging on. I've deteriorated quite a lot now. Lost a lot of functionality in my body at this point, so I'm bedbound and mostly just watching lots of TV and seeing family. But I'm comfortable, eating apples and cheese and lots of little treats. Thank you all for still checking in and thinking of me. I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by my friends and family right now. When you boil it all down to it, in the end, it really is all you need. Anyway, I'll try update again soon. That one really sits with you. 22 years old. Think about that for a moment. 22. and facing the absolute end of everything, knowing you have weeks, maybe months if you're lucky. And instead of falling apart completely, instead of just giving up, she's finding ways to make it meaningful. She's leaving gifts for her family, things with her handwriting on them, so they'll have something to hold on to. She's donating to the charities that helped her. She's eating fancy crab and apples and cheese and finding small joys where she can. And that last update, when she talks about being bedbound but comfortable, surrounded by family and friends, and realizing that when you strip everything else away, that's really all that matters. That's not something most people learn until they're much, much older, if they learn it at all. But she figured it out at 22 because she had to. The part about people trying to push religion on her in her final days, that's something too. She's very clear about respecting people's prayers, understanding that's how they show they care, but also setting a boundary that she's not interested in being converted on her deathbed. There's a strength in that, in knowing what you believe and what you don't, even when you're that vulnerable. And the credit card debt? Honestly, when you put it in that context, it's hard to argue with her logic. The debt dies with her. She's making her last days a little better, helping some people and organizations along the way, and yeah, some bank is going to eat the loss. But like she said, at least they get to keep living. It makes you think about what really matters, doesn't it? What you'd do if you knew you only had weeks left. Would you spend it worried about being proper and following all the rules, or would you do exactly what she did? We can take our time moving to the next one. Marrying for money sucks, and I do not recommend it. Married a 40-year-old when I was 19. Started dating when I was 17. Yes, it was gross, but that's what happened. The only reason he married me is because I was hot. The only reason I married him is because he had money. I actually do have other redeeming characteristics, but he married me because I was hot. I know this. Everyone knows this. It doesn't feel great, but I can deal with it. We've been married 20 years, 4 kids, so we are stable and we have lots in common at this point. And we do love each other, but if I could go back and slap myself, I would. What nobody tells you, or they try and you don't listen because you're a young teenager, is that marrying like this means you will owe him. For everything, every single day, not just in the bedroom but in every other matter in your life. The stuff you never imagined someone else trying to decide for you. And you don't just owe him for the money, it's a lot heavier than that. He'll never say it out loud, but you'll know the deal. Fundamentally unequal. He'll pull rank at the most random times and it will make you feel like you're falling through the floor. I don't hate my life or anything. I accept that I made this bed and I have to lie in it, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. My oldest daughter is 2 years younger than I was when I met my husband, and I can't imagine. That last line really drives the whole thing home. When your own child reaches the age you were when you made a life-altering decision, and you look at them and can't imagine them making that same choice, can't imagine them with someone that much older, can't imagine them entering into that kind of arrangement, that's when you really understand how young you were, how much you didn't know. 20 years, 4 kids, and they've built something that works on the surface. She says they love each other, they have things in common, they're stable. But underneath all of that is this fundamental imbalance that never goes away. This sense of owing him not just financially, but in every aspect of life. And the way she describes it, how he'll pull rank at random times, and it makes her feel like she's falling through the floor. You can feel how destabilizing that must be. Never knowing when it's coming, never feeling like you're on equal footing. And the thing is, he probably doesn't even see it that way. He probably thinks everything is fine, that they have a good marriage, but she's living with this constant awareness of the imbalance, this constant low-level anxiety about when he's going to remind her of it, intentionally or not. She's very clear that she doesn't hate her life. She's made peace with the choice she made, but she also wants other people, especially young people, to understand what they'd be signing up for. That marrying for money isn't just a practical transaction that you can keep separate from the rest of your relationship. It colors everything. It shifts the power dynamic in ways you can't predict when you're 19 and just thinking about financial security. People tried to tell her. She admits that. But she didn't listen because she was young and thought she knew better, or thought it wouldn't apply to her. Now she's the one trying to tell others, knowing they probably won't listen either. The next one's a bit lighter. We could use that right about now. I stay up late at night to watch movies specifically so nobody joins me. Let me preface this with, I love my wife, I love my daughter. However, I do not love watching a movie with them. Movies should be watched in the dark, with a big bowl of popcorn, and minimal to zero talking. My wife insists on having the lights on full blast, not even dimmed, but bright as noon. Then she enjoys chatting, and then asking 15 minutes later what's going on in the movie. Or when I'm doing my annual Vincent Price marathon in October, call them stupid old movies. The biggest cardinal sin are the distractions. Hey, can you get me some milk? Run to the kitchen and get me a snack. When I watch a movie, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching a movie. No phones, no laptops, no tablets. All the while paying attention to the movie, and not 15 other things. So if there's a movie I want to see, and I know she won't be interested, I wait for her to go to bed, then make some popcorn and watch a good movie. By myself, with no distractions. After I type this and hit post, I'm making some popcorn and watching the new Knives Out movie. I'll see your replies in a couple hours. This one's pretty harmless, really. It's just about someone who has a very specific way they like to watch movies, and it's completely incompatible with how their family watches movies. And instead of making it into a big thing, instead of trying to force everyone to watch movies his way, or getting frustrated every time, he's just quietly carved out his own time to do it the way he enjoys. There's something kind of nice about that, actually. He's not being mean about it. He's not criticizing his wife and daughter for how they enjoy movies. He just recognizes that they're never going to enjoy movies together the same way, so he finds times when they're asleep to have his own movie-watching experience. And you can understand both sides, right? Some people treat movies like a focused, immersive experience. Lights off, no talking, no distractions. The movie has your complete attention. Other people treat movies like a casual social activity, something playing in the background while you chat and snack and multitask. Neither way is wrong, they're just different. The Vincent Price marathon comment is funny though. Imagine being really into classic horror films, doing your annual October tradition, and your partner is calling them stupid old movies. That would get old fast. At that point, yeah, waiting until everyone's asleep and enjoying it on your own terms makes perfect sense. It's one of those small relationship compromises that nobody really talks about. Not everything has to be done together. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to recognize your incompatibilities and just do your own thing for a couple hours. Let's move on to the next one. I paid a couple of girls to feign interest in my mate. I've got a mate who's nearly 30 now. To be honest, he's not a great-looking bloke, but more importantly, he's had no experience with girls ever, which sucks because he's genuinely a great dude and maintains friendships with some girls, but he tends to friend zone himself before asking one out. He's suffered pretty hardcore anxiety and depression and hates going out. So this year at my birthday, one of the only events he'll come out for, because he's a great bloke and knows it means a lot to me, I asked a couple of random girls if I could buy them a drink and they could just compliment my mate on something and have a small chat. No obligation to be anything but just polite and nice. And my lord, he's been a different dude ever since. His confidence has skyrocketed. He's even asking when we're going out next. If he ever found out what I did, I genuinely think he would never leave the house again. This is one of those situations where your heart can be in the right place and you can still end up doing something that's ethically questionable. You can see exactly why he did it. Watching your friends struggle with anxiety and depression, watching them isolate themselves and friend zone themselves before even trying, seeing them miss out on life because they're convinced nobody would be interested, and then finding a small way to give them a confidence boost that actually worked. His friend is doing better, he's going out more, he's asking to hang out. That's a real positive change. But it's built on a lie. Those girls weren't genuinely interested, they were paid to be nice, and now his friend's confidence is based on an interaction that wasn't real, and the friend can never know, because if he found out, it would confirm every negative thing he believes about himself. It would validate his worst fears, that nobody would show interest in him unless they were literally paid to do so. So now this guy has to carry the secret forever. He can't ever tell his friend, he can't ever let it slip. And every time he sees his friend doing better, being more confident, getting out more, he has to sit with the knowledge of how that confidence was built. The intention was good, the result seems positive, but the foundation is shaky, and if it ever comes out, it could do more damage than if he'd never done it at all. That's the risk with this kind of thing. You're trying to help, but you're building someone's confidence on something false, and if they ever discover that, it could shatter them. It's a difficult one, no easy answers there. The next story is about a lie that spiraled way out of control. I've been faking an allergy for years, and now it's gone way too far. This started as a dumb excuse, and now I'm in too deep. Years ago, I went on a date with this girl who was obsessed with peanut butter. She kept pushing me to try her peanut butter smoothie, even after I said I wasn't in the mood. Instead of just saying no, I blurted out, "Oh, I can't, I'm allergic." Big mistake. She was super concerned, asked a million questions, and I figured, whatever, I'd never see her again. But then she introduced me to her friend group, and they all knew about my allergy. At that point, correcting it felt too awkward. Fast forward 6 years. I'm still friends with these people. My allergy is a known fact. They warn restaurants for me. They check ingredients. One of them even threw out a peanut butter cake someone brought to a party, just to be safe. The worst part? I love peanut butter. I eat it in secret. I have a stash at work. Once, my best friend said, "Man, it must suck not knowing what a Reese's tastes like." And I just nodded solemnly. Now, my girlfriend, who also believes I'm allergic, wants us to move in together, and she's super cautious about food. I'm terrified she'll find my peanut butter stash and think I've been lying to her, which I have, for years. I have no idea how to get out of this. Do I fake a miracle recovery, a medical misdiagnosis, or do I just keep the lie going forever? 6 years. 6 entire years of maintaining a lie that started because he didn't want to try a peanut butter smoothie, and now it's become this massive thing where people are actively protecting him from something that isn't even real. They're checking ingredients, warning restaurants, throwing out food just to keep him safe from an allergy he doesn't have. And the image of him nodding solemnly when his best friend said it must suck not knowing what a Reese's tastes like, that's both funny and kind of sad. He's created this whole false version of himself, and now he has to maintain it in all these little moments. But now it's getting serious because his girlfriend wants to move in together, and she's going to find his secret peanut butter stash. And when she does, she's not going to think, "Oh, he made up an allergy 6 years ago on a first date." She's going to think he's been lying to her specifically, deliberately, throughout their entire relationship. It's going to look so much worse than it is. The thing is, at this point, there's no good way out. A miracle recovery is going to seem suspicious. A medical misdiagnosis after 6 years is going to raise questions. But continuing the lie means living a double life forever, hiding peanut butter, always being vigilant about not getting caught. The best option is probably just coming clean, being honest about how it started and how it spiraled, and dealing with the consequences. Yeah, people are going to be annoyed that they've been accommodating a fake allergy for 6 years. His girlfriend might be upset about the lying, but it's better than getting caught with a peanut butter stash and having to explain that, and it's better than maintaining this exhausting double life forever. But you can understand why he hasn't done that yet. 6 years is a long time. The longer a lie goes on, the harder it becomes to correct it. Every day that passes makes it more awkward to come clean. So he's just stuck, trapped in a lie of his own, making over something as silly as not wanting to try a smoothie. It's one of those small lies that teaches you why honesty is usually the better policy, even when it's awkward. Let's move to the next one. I once lied on my CV. I got the job and got promoted. I lied on my CV and somehow convinced the world I was a coding wizard. Now I'm stuck in a never-ending cycle of Google searches and caffeine-fueled coding sessions. This is when I regret it, and I do, indeed. My browser history is a treasure trove of how to fix syntax errors, and what does this error message mean? I learned to code on the job, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm making it up as I go along. My colleagues think I'm a genius, but really, I'm just good at hiding my panic. When they ask me to explain my code, I launch into a confident-sounding, jargon-filled monologue, hoping they'll get lost in the technical mumbo-jumbo. The best part? I got a promotion and a raise, which basically translates to "we're paying you more to keep pretending you're good at this." Edit. Thanks. I feel so supported by the huge IT and developer community. At least I've learned surprisingly fast, and also that truth is told by how you work. Action over words. Maybe after all, I can call myself a real programmer now. This is one of those fake it till you make it stories that actually worked out. And honestly, it's probably more common than people think, especially in tech fields. They went in not knowing what they were doing, panic searched their way through every problem, learned on the job, and apparently did well enough that they got promoted and got a raise. And that edit at the end is important. They learned surprisingly fast. The truth is told by how you work, not by what you claim to know at the start. Action over words. That's actually a pretty healthy way to look at it. Yeah, they lied on their CV, but then they put in the work to actually become competent. They learned the skills they claim to have, And now they're questioning whether they can call themselves a real programmer, and the answer is probably yes. If you're doing the work, solving the problems, writing code that functions, then you're a programmer. Doesn't really matter how you got there. A lot of people in tech have some version of this story. They exaggerated their skills to get in the door, then spent the first few months terrified and Googling everything, and eventually they actually became good at it. It's not the recommended path, and it's definitely stressful, but it works more often than you'd think. The difference between this and some of the other confessions is that this person actually followed through. They didn't just fake it and coast. They faked it and then worked hard enough to make it real. That's a pretty big distinction. Although you do have to feel for them during those early days, launching into confident-sounding, jargon-filled monologues while internally panicking, hoping their colleagues get lost in the technical mumbo-jumbo. That must have been exhausting, but they made it through. And now for the last story tonight. This one's quite a journey. I lied to my pick-me friend and she got a tattoo based off of it. It's been about 2 years since this happened, but I just got confirmation from a friend who attended her tattoo appointment that it was because of what I said. The backstory. I, 25-year-old female, was introduced to Peggy, fake name, 25-year-old female, through a mutual friend. She had recently moved into a friend's neighboring apartment unit and was quickly introduced to our friend group. Almost immediately, I could tell we weren't going to get along based off of some backhanded compliments that were given, but I decided that it was too quick to judge her fairly and invited her to a game night that a friend and I were hosting. Huge mistake. Game 1, sardines. During a drunken game of sardines in the dark, Peggy faked a fall and pushed my head into a shelf. How do I know she faked it? Because she literally told me in front of everyone and laughed about it, saying I found him first, that's why I pushed you. Game 2, King's Cup. Peggy called me out during the never have I ever portion for having gone through a divorce. Talking about it normally wouldn't have bothered me since everyone who was there already knew about it and were really supportive during that time, but it was the fact that she was trying to single me out and shame me for it. Throughout the rest of the night, this kind of behavior continued, and by the end, I was thoroughly convinced she had some sort of vendetta against me. Finding out what, or in my case who, it was, took almost no time at all. One of our friends, who we'll call Mark, was in attendance that first night. Mark, 28-year-old male, is a tall, kind, funny, and generally attractive guy. Essentially, he's catnip for her type. At this time, we were pretty close friends, and Peggy did not like that. For the next 6 months, anytime he was around, I had to deal with the most ridiculous, awkward, and petty attempts of her trying to single me out or embarrass me. Now here's where the tattoo comes into play. I had been planning on getting a dragon tattoo for over a year. I am fully aware that dragons are a common and trending tattoo, but I wanted it anyways because it was special to me and my mom. I had even worked with my tattoo artist on incorporating her favorite flowers into the piece and figuring out what kind of style and other details I wanted. About a month before my appointment, Peggy heard a friend and I talking about the tattoo and started asking questions. I swear I could see the moment the light bulb went off in her head because she grew the biggest grin I've ever seen. My light bulb moment happened shortly after. When she asked where and what kind of dragon tattoo I wanted to get, I lied. I told her about how much I loved the movie Spirited Away, because I do, it's a banger, and went on a tangent about how I grew up on that movie, how my dad showed it to me, and that it'd be cool if Haku, was wrapping around my arm or something. If you haven't seen the movie, one of the main characters is a boy named Haku who turns into a dragon. Peggy had never seen this movie before, so I encouraged her to check it out and ended the conversation there. Now, considering she had never seen it before, I didn't think she'd actually do it, but read it. She did it. And it wasn't just a tiny cutesy little thing either. She committed to my exact description. The thing is freaking huge. When she showed it to me 2 weeks later, I was in shock and she probably thought I was upset for taking something from me. But I went home that night and switched between feeling awful for lying to her and laughing for how utterly unbelievable she was for doing it. 2 years later, and I'm still doing that. I had confessed to a friend recently about my lie, and that's when she told me. She went to the tattoo appointment with Peggy that day, and word for word Peggy had said she's going to be so upset. This is like the exact tattoo she wanted. Then there's an edit for frequently asked questions. Regarding the girl who went to the appointment with Peggy, we didn't become friends until after this all happened. At the time, we were only acquaintances, and she ended up dropping her as a friend for her own personal reasons after. We discovered later in our friendship our mutual distaste for Peggy, But this also wasn't the foundation of our friendship. Neither her or I dated Mark. I had turned him down early in our friendship before she came into the picture. Don't get me wrong, Mark is a catch, but he deserves someone who's crazy about him, and that just wasn't me. We sorted our friendship out prior to this whole mess, and hopefully he can find a healthy middle ground of crazy. He was pretty oblivious to the whole thing, and I didn't need him to sort it out for me, so he didn't know until way after. Didn't know how to edit a post until now, but here you go. Face is blocked out for obvious reasons, but I don't follow her socials, so you guys will have to settle for her cropped profile picture. I'll keep you guys posted if I have any updates. For now, this is just a confession into the void. Then there's an update. I finally showed this post to the friend who went with her to the appointment, and she was kind enough to supply a picture of the tattoo in progress. The crazy thing is, she did this to her too, with a tattoo commemorating her favorite music artist. From her. I initially wanted the tattoo because he's literally my favorite artist, and so I sent my artist, the one you met, my reference photo, and she said she wanted to come because she was thinking about getting one too. So we get there, and he started doing my stencil and stuff, and when she saw, she said, "Oh my gosh, that's so cute. It would be so cool if we got matching tattoos." I, being excited, and at this point having no issues with her whatsoever, was like, "Yeah girl, it's your body." So I just was like, okay, and let it happen. I guess it's a memento for her. She got the exact same thing and exact same placement too. Final update. To the readers who are asking me to show this to her to get her reaction, I don't live there anymore, so I can't. I can say, however, one of her friends found this post and reached out to me on Reddit, trying to get me to say my name. I didn't. Since then, Peggy has changed her profile picture. So this is a story about someone who got so fed up with being targeted and copied that they basically set a trap, and it worked perfectly. And 2 years later, they're still processing whether to feel guilty or vindicated about it. The thing is, you can understand both sides of that internal conflict. On one hand, deliberately lying to someone to trick them into getting a permanent tattoo on their body is pretty harsh. Tattoos are forever. That's a big consequence for being annoying and competitive. On the other hand, Peggy literally said at the tattoo appointment that the writer was going to be so upset that this was like the exact tattoo she wanted. That shows the intention wasn't innocent. She wasn't inspired by the idea. She was specifically trying to take something from the writer, to upset them, to get there first. And the pattern of behavior backs that up, pushing her head into a shelf and laughing about it, calling her out about her divorce to embarrass her. 6 months of petty attempts to single her out and humiliate her whenever Mark was around. This wasn't just someone being a little competitive. This was targeted behavior. So the writer saw an opportunity to turn it around and took it. And honestly, the result is kind of perfect. Peggy got a huge tattoo of a character from a movie she'd never even seen, permanently on her body, thinking she was stealing the writer's idea and upsetting her, when actually the writer had her real tattoo planned out with her artist the whole time. And then the update reveals that Peggy did this to someone else too, showed up to someone's tattoo appointment, saw their design, and then insisted on getting matching tattoos with the exact same design and exact same placement. So it wasn't just the writer she did this to. It was a pattern. That makes it a little easier to not feel too bad for Peggy. If you're going to repeatedly copy other people's tattoos for the specific purpose of taking something from them or making them upset, eventually someone's going to catch on and use that against you. The part where one of Peggy's friends found the post and tried to get the writer to reveal her name is interesting too. And then Peggy changed her profile picture right after. So she knows the post exists. She might even know it was about her, but she doesn't know for sure who wrote it. That must be eating at her. It's petty, sure, but it's also kind of brilliant in a way. The writer found a way to protect something that was meaningful to them and their mom, while also teaching Peggy a lesson about copying people. And Peggy has to live with that tattoo, probably forever, as a reminder. What do you think about that one? Was it justified, or did the writer go too far? Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's stories from the Confessions subreddit. Thank you for spending this time here, just relaxing and listening along. These stories are always a reminder that everyone's carrying something, everyone's made choices, they're still processing, and sometimes the things we confess anonymously are the things that sit with us the heaviest. If there's another subreddit you'd like to hear stories from, feel free to drop a suggestion in the comments below. And if you're enjoying these videos, a like or subscribe really helps the channel grow. But no pressure, just relax, get comfortable, and we'll take our time with these. Let's ease into the first one. This story is called Want to Yell at Someone Over Music? I'll Hijack Your Speaker. So, a bit of context. I work in an oil field construction setting. We have regular employees and we have contractors who come in for specialized jobs. Anyone who's had the displeasure of working with an oil field contractor knows that most of them think they're hot shit. Anyways, we're in the middle of a job, and our shop that usually has a half dozen employee welders and laborers has tripled in population due to the addition of contractors. We've had a general rule in the shop that since most people can't agree on what music to listen to, we instead have 4 radios in each corner playing the same station so that everyone has some background noise and it's mostly tolerable. In comes this contractor with a party-sized JBL speaker. We're all working, heads down, when over top of the radio starts playing an admittedly decent work playlist. My tastes are fairly varied, so I don't care too much. I just turn my radio off so I'm not living in remix land all day. I go over to the guy, introduce myself, and chat a bit. Eventually I point at his speaker and jokingly ask him if he takes requests. He laughs and says no. Okay, no biggie. Again, it's a decent playlist. A few hours later, one of our laborers goes up to him and asks if he'd turn the music down. He doesn't care for the playlist and would rather just listen to the radio. This contractor comes unglued on him and starts off on a racist tirade. The laborer is from the Philippines, and the contractor tells him to get bent. Now this will not do. I open Spotify on my phone to connect to my Bluetooth stereo to drown him out, but to my surprise, this man has jams enabled on his account. For those who don't know, jams allow multiple people to contribute to a playlist. So I join his jam. He doesn't notice. I add a song similar to his current list. It plays. He doesn't notice. And that's when I got a mischievous grin and realized I could play mind games with him. For those of you who haven't worked in the oil field, there's 2 important things at play here. 1, oil field workers are totally straight, and any implication otherwise is grounds for a fight. And 2, they usually only listen to totally straight music. Rap, metal, some EDM, but definitely no pop and definitely no girl bands. So, every few songs the Spice Girls would start playing. He'd angrily change the song. Maybe a bit of NSYNC. Next song, K-pop Demon Hunters, throwing his tools in frustration. Then he changed playlists. I kept dropping absolute totally straight kryptonite into his playlist. For hours. All the while, the other contractors are giving him hell because he's not playing totally straight music. After 5 hours of him raging in confusion, he turned off his speaker. This one's for you, Raul. Sometimes the smallest acts of resistance can be the most satisfying. Not violent, not dramatic, just persistent. A quiet kind of payback that chips away at someone who thought they were untouchable. And honestly, when someone goes on a racist tirade over a simple request, it's hard not to feel like they had it coming. Let's move to the next one. This story is titled, I Got an Asshole Customer Arrested. About 15 years or so ago, I worked at a hydroponics store. We sold supplies for growing tomatoes, in quotation marks. There was one guy who came in several times. He made some larger purchases, but he was a massive jerk. One day, he wanted an exchange or refund. At this point, I can't remember the exact detail, but it was against store policy, and I declined the request. He contacts the owner, and rather than back me up, the owner capitulates and berated me for not making the transaction. The guy comes in, and now he's got an even bigger sense of entitlement. We had made some special orders for this guy, which we are required to get information from the customer, including phone number and address. And given what he had purchased, he was growing a lot of tomatoes. I take his info and call the police tip line. A couple months later, I find out he was busted with a bunch of plants. The best part was since he was found guilty, I received $500. If you're doing something illegal, don't be a dick to the people who have nothing to lose by turning you in. It's one of those situations where someone's own behavior becomes the thing that undoes them. If he'd just been kind, or even just neutral, none of it would have happened. The $500 is almost just a bonus at that point. The real satisfaction probably came from knowing that his arrogance led directly to his downfall. What do you think about that one? Was it justified, or did it go too far? We'll keep going. This next story is called Accidental Revenge, and I'm petty enough to laugh. My sister-in-law has gone feral on my husband, her other brother, and now her mom. She's essentially destroyed 4 generations of family ability to get together and has instructed her 4 adult children not to have contact with the 84-year-old grandmother or the rest of the family, cousins included. It's been a brutal 2 years. We suspect it's about money, but who knows? Brain tumor is an alternative explanation. My mother-in-law is not perfect, but basically a very sweet woman. She's giving each family a lump sum to be divided between the family members and has written out checks accordingly. My husband and I just have a son, so we 3 come out the best. My brother-in-law has 3 kids and 1 grandchild. My very fertile sister-in-law has 4 adult kids, 3 grandchildren and spouses in the mix. Total division by 11. I wish I could be there when she does the math and realizes the brother and sister-in-law she stabbed in the back get 3 times what she does. Especially me, as she is all about blood family. It's not a revenge they planned. It's just the natural consequence of how things shook out, and sometimes that's the kind that feels the most like justice. Family estrangement is never easy, and when it happens over something like money, there's an extra layer of sadness to it. But when someone cuts everyone off and then realizes they've cost themselves in a tangible way, it does bring a certain symmetry to the situation. The universe has its own way of keeping score sometimes. Let's continue. The next story is about a nephew and a gaming laptop. It's titled, "My 14-year-old nephew ruined my gaming laptop downloading hacks, then tried to do the same thing to my PC, so I'm gonna kill switch his PC." So a little backstory. My nephew decided to mess with my gaming laptop downloading hacks. They got it compromised. His mother, who is my sister, never offered to pay to get the computer fixed, so it was left compromised for years. I couldn't get into it or nothing. And then I got a PC and monitor for my 20th birthday that I saved up for so long. It was Thanksgiving this year, and he was guessing the password until he finally got it right. He was trying to download stuff on it, and I caught him before he could actually download anything. I never said nothing. I just stood there, making sure that he didn't do nothing else. But little does he know that I have a little trick that will make his entire PC and monitor stop working. All I have to do is plug in a kill switch drive that I bought, and it will shut his whole PC and monitor off permanently, logging him out of accounts, deleting accounts like Fortnite and YouTube and status. Now, this one's still in the future tense, so it hasn't happened yet, but the intention is there. It's hard to say what's proportional when family is involved, especially when it's a teenager who probably doesn't fully understand the consequences of what they're doing. But after being burned twice, you can understand the impulse. There's something about having something you worked hard for and saved for being threatened that brings out protective instincts. Whether actually going through with it is the right call is another question entirely. We can take this one slowly and move on to the next. This story is called Make Her Your Project. The person telling this story notes at the beginning, "Please note, I'm changing some minute details for sake of anonymity, but the overall premise is what occurred. Sorry for any inconsistencies as a result. I'm usually not one for revenge. I like to focus on forgiving, letting apathy roll a person out of my life and leaving the rest to the Lord. A few years ago, however, the worst year of teaching I've ever experienced proved differently. I usually teach high schoolers, but when health issues led to my return home from across the US and I needed a job as soon as possible, I was quick to snatch up a career as a 7th grade teacher after being offered the job on the spot. That should have been my first warning. It proved to be one of the hardest years I've experienced as a teacher. We were understaffed, and my department was separated into cliques between on-level and honors-level middle school teachers. I was assigned to on-level classes, but my advisor was in charge of honors classes, as was the head of the department. Thus, I was stuck at an in-between, with both groups of teachers wanting me to follow their lesson plans at weekly meetings while also excluding me in their planning, albeit unintentionally. They already had their thing and their own languages with their lesson plans they'd used for the last several years, and I was the new kid on the block. I chose to adjust my lessons according to both groups. I would listen, ask questions, and adjust my lessons according to whichever plans best fit the needs of my classes. Issues soon arose. Admin did not prove supportive. Teachers in this school were unable to send a student to the office for immediate behavior management. Rather, we filed a paper form, and the admin would meet with the student later to determine punishment. I once sent a student out for throwing a book at another, and they were sent back to my class despite their escalated behavior and anger levels. I was later scolded for sending the student and told to file directly online and wait, despite the threats the student also hurled during the altercation. The student in question was given a lunch timeout. 2 students soon transferred from my class. I would not allow issues with another student to carry into my class. Leave your drama at the door. Don't bring it in here, is a motto I try to follow to keep classes safer. I explained to the students that their pursuing these issues in my class were what resulted in consequences. If I see a situation with any form of bullying arise, I stop it. Any insult, I want it kept out of my class. When I asked the principal about additional steps due to news of the students transferring, she said it was fine and that the parents were only upset because they did not like my correcting their students for misbehavior. It was evidently not okay, as she told the reason for transfer to the other on-level teachers, and they blamed me for their class's growth. The teachers resented that I indirectly led to more behavioral struggles in their classes. I felt horrible for it, as the increased ostracization became apparent with their blatantly ignoring me at department meetings. I would ask about a lesson, and they would not reply. I relied more on the honors teacher's lessons, and my students grew as a result. That's not the petty revenge, however. One student's mother requested a transfer from one of the other on-level classes, and the student was transferred to mine. I didn't know she had requested this transfer when I noticed the new schedule, and I went to the teacher to ask about the student so I could provide support and a smooth transfer between classes. Our conversation went something like this. Me: I noticed the student is now on my roster. Is there anything I should know to help her out? What does she struggle in? Teacher: she transferred to your class? Me: yes. So I was wondering. She stopped listening to me at this point. Teacher started laughing instead, and she walked off without an answer, waltzing right up to one of our co-workers who happened to be guiding traffic outside and saying poetic justice before walking off laughing. I felt insulted for myself and my student, and I cried once back in my room. I called my mom to cry about the further ostracization, and she gave me the best advice I could have taken in this situation. Make that student your project. Prove them wrong. So I did. I started by calling the student's mom, asking her about her child and how I could help. She sounded frantic and worried. The mom expressed the lack of support from the previous teacher, as the student struggles with focus and energy. I researched ways to help and asked other teachers about what helps the student in class. Positive reinforcement, movement, the usual that I already try to provide. I also assigned the student to weekly tutoring to help her with skills she missed in the other class. The student blossomed, scores grew, and when Teacher Appreciation Week arrived, she brought me my favorite treat of cookies and Starbucks. I clung to thoughts of her and my other students whenever days were hard during co-worker meetings or when admin failed to support me in punishing repeat offenders. Maybe I failed to connect with my co-workers, but I have students who are growing. Parents who support me. I try to do the same. One student whose mom was in a car accident received Easter gifts for her girls when they couldn't make it out of town, and I tried to contact home for at least one student a week and provide a positive update, not just for the usual super students, but for those who went unnoticed as well. Then came the email. The mom of the student who transferred to my class emailed me during the last month of school, showing me a copy of a separate email she sent. I never told her about my issues with the teacher her child transferred from, but she wanted me to see the email she made for my principal and superintendent. The email was scathing. It spoke of the support the student's previous teacher failed to provide, complete with documentation, or rather, the teacher's lack thereof, and praised my guidance for the student. She discussed my avid communication and support, and concluded with a statement that any district would be glad to have her, all while not knowing I had already submitted my letter of resignation. As the year closed, one of the other teachers actually came to me and apologized. A close co-worker had shared the details of the lack of support from admin in regards to the behavioral issues they'd heard of in my class. amongst other things, and I left on a higher note. I am still teaching, but my new school is better, brighter. I've received recognition, and I'm overall a happier and stronger teacher after surviving that worst year of teaching. The best revenge was being the best teacher I can be, and I'm proud of it. That one has a different feeling to it, doesn't it? Not revenge in the traditional sense. Just doing the work, doing it well, and letting that speak for itself. Sometimes that's the most powerful kind. There's something about responding to cruelty with excellence that cuts deeper than any planned retaliation ever could, and the fact that it helped a student in the process makes it even better. You can just listen along. We'll keep going. This next story is called Revenge on Noisy Neighbors. I live in university apartments that are cheap but terrible. It's one of the only places I can afford as a grad student. Just to note, the building is in a very rich area but falling apart. The building, and unfortunately my apartment, are facing a daycare. A couple things to note. The kids have outside time from 8 to 10 and 3 to 5 approximately. They play loud music for the kids outside and let them bang on things so hard we thought it was construction noise. The kids scream all day long. But not just one kid. The other day I heard like 10 all of a sudden start to scream in unison. The walls are thin and it wakes me up and disrupts work. The residents have apparently already asked them many times to try to keep the noise levels down, and they don't care. I get that these are kids, but the daycare itself could be doing a lot more to keep them quieter, starting with not blasting music, or letting them bang, or telling them not to scream in unison. So I want to take revenge, not on the kids, but on the workers. I'm thinking of starting to play something really annoying on my speakers and pointing it at them. Maybe hard techno or profane rap or just some sort of annoying alarm sound. Any other ideas? Now, this one's still in the planning stages. It's less of a revenge story and more of a revenge thought. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. Constant noise when you're trying to work or sleep can wear anyone down. But there's also the reality that a daycare is what it is. Kids are loud. It's not malicious. It's just kids being kids. Still, the instinct to push back is understandable. Whether it's the right move is another question entirely. Fighting noise with noise rarely leads anywhere good, but when you're exhausted and your complaints have been ignored, the temptation is real. Let's move on to the next one. This story is called Banker's Revenge on Petty Jerk Customer. I worked at a bank a long time ago, in the 1980s. This guy who was a jerk customer came in and said he wanted to close his account. He had a stack of checks, and I mean a stack of checks. He had sat down and spent who knows how many hours writing out checks for 1 penny each, thinking he was getting revenge on the bank by forcing them to sit there for hours cashing each 1-cent check, one at a time, to get his $300 or whatever it was. The teller called over the operations manager. The jerk customer was looking at her, smiling smugly. He obviously didn't know that banks can pass a credit or debit to represent a check or deposit slip. I'm simplifying here. So, she makes out a debit for the total amount, hands the guy a cashier's check for the total amount, and thanks him for his business. He stormed out of there, so mad. Can you imagine spending several nights filling out checks? For you youngsters, this was before ATMs. It's one of those stories where someone goes to great lengths to inconvenience someone else, only to find out they wasted their own time for nothing. The universe has a way of humbling people like that. You can almost picture him sitting at his kitchen table, check after check, convinced he's about to pull off the perfect revenge. And then reality just deflates the whole thing in about 30 seconds. Whenever you're ready, we'll continue. This story is called Take My Hours From Me. How do you like being shut down for roaches? This happened to me when I was currently working at the restaurant I worked at for over 9 years. We had got a new management at our restaurant, but they were not at all interested in doing things the way they're supposed to be doing, and then instead they started cutting corners on everything. Which mean they were also getting rid of the older employees who knew better than they were supposed to be doing. So my hours were cut, and so were a lot of other employees that worked there for so long. Never any problems with them. They just didn't want to be bothered by old employees. After not being on the schedule for the second week in a row, I just decided to take matters into my own hands. At this point, HR was a joke, and our complaints were falling on deaf ears. They favored new management, so I had to take matters even higher. They started having a roach issue at the restaurant because of the cuts to the budget and the restaurant. It was very disgusting, yet I didn't say much because I knew they'd get rid of me before the roaches. It's also important to point out that every time I reported seeing roaches, it was never documented and it was always covered up by management. Revenge. After they did not schedule me for the third time in a row, I made sure to take it in my hands to send an anonymous message to the Department of Health of my city to let them know exactly where they'd find the roaches at the restaurant and what time to come out to avoid them being caught and trying to hide the roaches at infestation. I mean, it was terrible. There were roaches in the cheese shakers. This was a pizza place. My revenge worked. The restaurant ended up being shut down by the Department of Health and they received a B. Also say bye-bye to management for that matter too. So not only did I get a restaurant shut down and demoted to a B, but I got the managers and their managers fired too. Mess with my hours and you know what happens next time. It's one of those situations where management thought they could push people out quietly and cut corners without consequence, but someone who's been there long enough knows where the problems are. And when you combine someone with nothing left to lose with actual health code violations, management doesn't stand a chance. The fact that they were actively covering it up just makes it worse. At that point, it's not even just revenge. It's probably the right thing to do for anyone eating there. This next one is longer. It's called ProRevenge. Acting right was optional. The person begins. This happened over 7 years ago, and I think it's finally safe to tell it. For context, I'm a 54-year-old woman, very much a functioning adult and of sound mind. I used to be feral, not the cute kind. From about age 11 through my early 20s, I got into real trouble, no criminal record, but I cleaned up my act, earned a master's degree, and have been professional for over 20 years. People expect me to act right. Sometimes you have to pretend, sometimes you don't. So my niece was graduating high school that day. The venue was packed and the parking lot was chaos until I lucked into the spot. The one at the end of the row where no one can pull in front of you or to one side of you. It felt like a tiny, private victory. I parked, beaming, and enjoyed the ceremony. Afterwards, the family planned to meet at a nearby restaurant. When I walked back to my car, I froze. Someone had pulled directly in front of me, making their own parking, and backed up so close their bumper was actually pushed into mine. Their bumper was shoved a good 3 inches into my paid-off car. My heart dropped. It was the first car I'd ever bought new. I cared for it like it was a person. I went from proud aunt to incandescent rage in 5 seconds. I knew calling the cops at a private lot wouldn't do much, and, crucially, there was another graduation after ours at the same venue. I wasn't going to wait around for whoever owned the car to come back and face me. Leaving a note felt pointless. Would anyone call me about the damage they caused? So I did something I hadn't done in years. My ghetto came out. I took matters into my own hands, acted on impulse, quick and ugly. I used the pocket knife I always keep in my car just in case and punctured the offending car's tires. The air hissed out like a release valve. Both a rear and a front tire gave way. It was loud, messy, and unapologetic. I closed my door and drove off, still hot with it, not thinking about cameras or witnesses. When I arrived at the restaurant, I went back to check my bumper, expecting the worst. A crumpled mess, a new wall mark on my shiny first car. I peered at it and my jaw dropped. The bumper had somehow popped back out like someone had pushed it back into place. It looked like nothing had happened at all. No dent, no scrape, nothing. For a long minute, I just stood there, equal parts baffled and relieved. I'd gone full tilt feral and maybe crossed a line, and then the universe, or karma, or plain old car engineering, had fixed it for me. I hadn't needed revenge after all. Lesson learned. Old instincts die hard, and sometimes you get away with it, and sometimes you don't. There's something honest about this one. The person doesn't try to justify what they did or dress it up as righteous. They just tell it straight. They reacted in a way they're not proud of, and then found out it was all for nothing. It's a reminder that sometimes our worst impulses come out when we feel violated, even when we've spent years learning to control them. And maybe there's a lesson in the fact that the damage wasn't as bad as it seemed, but the tires were still slashed, and that can't be undone. What do you think? Was it understandable in the moment, or did they go too far? We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Stories about standing up to racism in the workplace, about turning in people who had it coming, about family dynamics and money, about teachers proving their worth, about noise and banking and health inspections, and old instincts that never quite leave us. Revenge takes a lot of forms. Sometimes it's calculated, sometimes it's impulsive, sometimes it's just doing your job so well that it speaks for itself. And sometimes, like with the family inheritance, it's not revenge at all, just consequence. There's a theme running through a lot of these though. People reaching a breaking point, a moment where enough is enough, where politeness runs out, where being reasonable stops being an option. And what comes after that moment says a lot about who we are and what we value. Some of these stories end with satisfaction, some with regret, some with a kind of justice that feels earned, and some that leave you wondering if it was worth it. Am I the asshole for quietly leaving a group plan after being left out of the conversation? The poster says, I'm still not sure if I handled this the right way, so I'm here for an outside perspective. Last weekend, a small group of friends, 5 of us total, made plans to meet up for dinner and then walk around a local street fair. The plan itself was casual, but it was something we'd all agreed on earlier in the week. I cleared my evening for it. The day of, we were coordinating through a group chat. I messaged asking what time we were meeting and where exactly. No one responded. About 15 minutes later, I saw 2 people in the chat sending memes to each other, so I figured they'd seen my message and would answer soon. They didn't. I sent a follow-up about 20 minutes later asking if plans had changed. Still nothing. At that point, I assumed maybe everyone was already together and just forgot to loop me in, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I went ahead and drove to the general area we talked about, thinking I'd figure it out when I got there. I parked, walked around for a bit, and kept checking my phone. Eventually, I saw on social media that 2 of them were already at a restaurant nearby. I didn't want to cause a scene or make things awkward, so instead of confronting anyone, I just went home. I didn't announce that I was leaving or send a passive-aggressive message. I figured it was better to cool off and talk about it later. The next morning, one friend messaged asking why I ghosted the plan and said it was rude to disappear without saying anything. I explained that I'd asked multiple times for details, didn't get responses, and didn't feel comfortable showing up uninvited once it seemed like things had already started without me. They said I should have spoken up more directly and that leaving without saying anything made it look like I didn't care. I said it felt like I was already being sidelined and I didn't want to beg for attention. Now the group feels a little tense. Some friends think I overreacted and should have just walked up to them anyway, while others say it's reasonable not to chase people who aren't responding. I didn't intend to punish anyone. I just didn't want to force myself into a situation where I clearly wasn't being included. Am I the asshole for leaving quietly instead of pushing my way into the plan? You know, this is such a relatable situation. I think a lot of us have been in that weird limbo where you're trying to coordinate with friends and it feels like you're shouting into the void. The poster asks legitimate questions in the group chat, asking for basic details like time and location, which are pretty essential for actually attending an event. And then to see people actively using the chat to send memes but ignoring the actual planning questions. That's frustrating. I can understand why the poster felt sidelined. When you're asking direct questions and getting silence while watching others interact in the same space, it does send a message, whether intentional or not. And I think the poster showed a lot of restraint by not sending angry messages or making a big deal about it in the moment. They just quietly removed themselves from a situation that felt uncomfortable. Now, the friends are saying the poster should have spoken up more directly or just shown up anyway. But here's the thing, the poster did speak up. Twice. They asked clear questions and got nothing back. At what point does speaking up turn into begging for inclusion? I think there's a fair argument that once you've asked twice and gotten ignored while others are clearly active in the chat, you've done your due diligence. The accusation that the poster ghosted the plan is interesting because from their perspective, they were the one being ghosted first. They tried to participate, got no response, and made a judgment call. Could they have sent one more message saying, "Hey, I'm heading home since I can't figure out where you all are"? Sure, but I don't think the lack of that message makes them an asshole. This feels like a communication breakdown on multiple sides, but the initial fault seems to lie with the friends who ignored direct questions in the group chat. Moving on to our next story. This one's titled, "Am I the asshole for not wearing pants to a party?" The poster writes, I'm a 21-year-old male and I'm a college student. I'm in a frat and I'm gay. It's not a conservative group. No one has ever given me shit for it, but I'm the only one. Every year my college has a date party to celebrate the end of finals. I didn't pick the theme. It's split a suit. Basically take the components of a suit and you have to divide that amongst you and your date. I saw the writing on the wall. A lot of guys being shirtless with blazers and suit pants, and a lot of girls in oversized dress shirts and ties with no pants. The issue was that didn't apply to me. I ended up asking a guy from my class I've been casually talking to as a first-time hanging out situation. Don't worry, he's gay too. I'm not delusional. I asked him what he felt comfortable wearing, and he said he prefers to be dressed, so I told him he could do the dress shirt and pants, and I'd be fine with the remainder. So basically I wore a blazer, was shirtless with a tie, and had on boxer briefs, which, to me, is on theme. None of the guys had an issue, but a friend's girlfriend came up to me and said that it was inappropriate, and I was making the girls uncomfortable. I felt embarrassed, so my date and I left. My date said I had misled him what the party would be like, and I was an asshole for not dressing appropriately. Now I feel like a jerk. Am I the asshole? Okay, this is an interesting one because it really highlights some double standards. The poster literally did exactly what the theme suggested. The theme was split a suit, and the expectation was that one person wears the top half and the other wears the bottom half. That's exactly what he did. He even specifically asked his date what he was comfortable with and worked out the arrangement beforehand. The poster mentions that he saw the writing on the wall with a lot of guys being shirtless, with blazers, and a lot of girls in oversized dress shirts with no pants. So the expectation was already set that this would be the vibe of the party. He followed that exact formula, just with a male-male couple instead of the typical male-female pairing. The fact that none of the guys had an issue, but a friend's girlfriend complained that he was making the girls uncomfortable, raises some questions. Were the girls actually uncomfortable, or was it the specific combination of a gay man in his underwear that bothered this one person? Because if we're being honest, if a straight guy showed up shirtless in suit pants, that would be considered totally normal for this theme, and girls showing up in oversized shirts with no pants would also be on theme. The poster wasn't doing anything different from what was expected at the party. He was following the dress code. The complaint seems less about what he was wearing and more about who was wearing it or who his date was. That's the uncomfortable part of this story. As for his date saying he misled him about what the party would be like, I'm a bit confused there. The poster asked his date what he was comfortable wearing, and the date said he preferred to be dressed, so the poster accommodated that. The date got to wear the more covered-up option. What exactly was the misleading part? Did the date not understand what a split-a-suit party meant? I think the poster is not the asshole here. He followed the theme, coordinated with his date, and dressed consistently with how everyone else was dressing for the party. The complaint seems to stem from bias rather than any actual inappropriate behavior. Let's move on. This story is called, "Am I the Asshole for Having My Phone on Do Not Disturb at Night?" The poster explains, "So earlier in the day, my mom told me to call her to wake her up so she doesn't oversleep for her overnight job. She had been drinking. She needed to be awake by 11:45 p.m. I was at work when we had this conversation. I called twice at 11:30, no answer. After a while, I, a 28-year-old female, checked her Ring camera to see if she was still there. She was. So I called again at 11:50. She didn't answer. I forgot my phone goes into bedtime/do not disturb mode at 10 p.m. I honestly didn't think anything of it because I was working and my mind wasn't on that. I got off at 12:05 a.m. My coworker gave me a ride. We're talking the whole way. I get home at 12:35. I see 7 missed calls from my mom and 8 missed calls/2 voicemails from my dad. Apparently my mom called my dad because I didn't answer her calls, which led to him calling me several times. So I called my mom. She's yelling, asking why would I call her if I wasn't going to pick up if she called back. I explained the calls were to wake her up and my phone goes into bedtime mode after a certain time. It wasn't intentional. She hangs up on me. I call my dad after. He tells me I need to take my phone off, do not disturb/bedtime mode because it could be an emergency. I explained that it's only set for certain time, that I forgot it was on, and that I felt they were overreacting a bit. He told me that it's not overreacting when you care about someone and want to make sure they're safe. And since I'm a mom, I shouldn't have my phone set to that. Also, what if someone dies? I explained I understood the concerns, but I'm fine and that it was a misunderstanding. He said he'd talk to me another time when I can think with some sense. Am I the asshole in this situation? Alright, let's break this down. The poster agreed to wake their mom up for work. That's a reasonable favor to do for a parent. The poster called multiple times, 11:30 and 11:50, trying to fulfill that commitment. The mom didn't answer any of those calls. So the poster did their part. They made the wake-up calls. The mom just didn't wake up to them. Then, the mom apparently wakes up later, panics because the poster didn't answer when she called back, and involves the dad, who then calls the poster 8 times. When the poster finally sees all these missed calls and reaches out, instead of anyone being relieved that the poster is okay, the mom yells at her and hangs up. The dad then lectures her about having her phone on, do not disturb, and dismisses her explanation as not thinking with sense. Here's the thing, the poster is a 28-year-old adult. They're allowed to have their phone on do not disturb mode at night. That's actually a healthy boundary for sleep and mental health. The fact that the poster forgot it was on is understandable, especially when they were at work and focused on other things. The dad's argument that, what if someone dies, is the classic guilt trip that many parents use, but it's not really fair. Yes, emergencies happen, but you can't live your entire life on high alert for every possible emergency. And having your phone on, do not disturb for a set period at night, doesn't mean you don't care about your family. It means you value your sleep and mental health. Also, the mom was drinking before her overnight shift, which might explain why she didn't wake up to the poster's calls. That's not the poster's fault. The poster attempted to wake her up multiple times. The responsibility for waking up ultimately falls on the mom, not on the poster to be available at all hours. The dad's comment that, since you're a mom, you shouldn't have your phone set to that, is particularly frustrating. Being a mother doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own boundaries and needs. The poster can be a good mom and still have designated sleep or do not disturb hours, especially during times when they're at work and presumably their child is being cared for. I don't think the poster is the asshole here. They tried to help their mom. Their mom didn't wake up to the calls, and then the parents overreacted when the poster wasn't immediately available afterward. The poster even acknowledged their parents' concerns and explained the situation calmly. The parents, on the other hand, yelled and dismissed the poster's explanation. Let's continue. This story is titled, Am I the Asshole? Don't Want Service Dog Over for Christmas. The poster, a 35-year-old male, says, I host Christmas for my family. We host a large Christmas Eve party every year. I host because I've got a good house for it, and I'm pretty central to the extended family. Last year, my cousin had a service dog in training that she brought to Christmas Eve. I was told this dog was maybe a year old. I don't have much experience with them and have never owned any. It pissed inside my house, and other smaller annoyances occurred, one involving my kid. I did hear some complaints from another family member too. A few weeks ago, I asked around to see if my cousin was coming, because I was going to nip this in the bud this year and ban it. I was told by family members that she wasn't coming, so I thought there was nothing to have to deal with. I got notice on Sunday she, in fact, would be in attendance, so I called her yesterday to tell her she could come and that her dog is not invited. This has caused drama. I've been told that her parents, my aunt and uncle, and her siblings are threatening to not come. It's been a nightmare. I've offered to let the dog stay outside, but it can't come inside. But that's an unreasonable ask, I'm being told. Am I the asshole here? Then the poster adds an edit. Found out more information. It is a diabetic service dog. She's training it herself. Got it as a puppy. I'm not going to comment on its legitimacy. I see this family member once a year. I just know what my experience with the dog is. This is a tricky situation because it involves service dogs, which are protected by law in many contexts, but also involves someone's private home and their right to set boundaries about who and what comes into their space. First, let's talk about the service dog aspect. The poster mentions it's a service dog in training that the cousin is training herself. Service dogs in training don't always have the same legal protections as fully trained service dogs, and the rules can vary by location. A dog that's urinating inside and causing other issues doesn't sound like it's very far along in its training, which makes sense if it was only a year old last year. The poster is hosting the party in their own home. They're opening up their private space for family, which is generous, but that also means they have the right to set boundaries about what happens in that space. If the dog caused issues last year, including involving the poster's kid, that's a legitimate concern. However, here's where it gets complicated. If this is a legitimate service dog for diabetes, the cousin may genuinely need the dog for her safety. Diabetic alert dogs can detect dangerous blood sugar levels and alert their handlers. That's not just a convenience, it could be a medical necessity. The poster offering to let the dog stay outside isn't really a solution if it's a service dog that needs to monitor the cousin's condition. That defeats the entire purpose of having the service dog there. I think the core issue here is communication and understanding. The poster seems to view this as just a dog that caused problems, while the cousin and her family see it as medical equipment that she needs. Neither side seems to have had a real conversation about what the dog's role is, what the cousin's needs are, and what accommodations might be reasonable. If the dog is truly a service dog in training for a medical condition and the cousin needs it for safety, then yes, banning it from the house is problematic. The poster might need to work with the cousin on management strategies, like having the dog on a leash, establishing bathroom break schedules, or creating a specific area where the dog stays. If the dog is not actually necessary for the cousin's safety and is more of an emotional support or pet situation that the cousin wants to bring, then the poster has more grounds to say no to having it in the home. The fact that the cousin is training it herself rather than working with a professional organization does raise some questions about the dog's training level and readiness for public situations. Most reputable service dog organizations have strict standards and wouldn't allow a dog that's urinating indoors to be used as a working service dog yet. This is tough because both sides have valid points. The poster has the right to protect their home and their child. The cousin potentially has a medical need. The real asshole move here might be the lack of communication and understanding from both sides. But given that this is the poster's home and they're the ones hosting out of generosity, I lean slightly towards saying they're not the asshole for setting boundaries, though the execution could have been better. This story is called, "Am I the Asshole for Canceling My Son's Birthday Over $10? The poster writes, "Am I the asshole? I'm a 34-year-old female, and I have a son who is turning 13 this weekend. His birthday falls close to Christmas, and I am not wealthy. We just get by. So many years he doesn't get a full party. This year felt like a big milestone becoming a teenager, so I wanted to make it special. We invited 10 kids and rented out some batting cages for 1.5 hours. I ordered a cake and planned a whole game and food and snacks. We live in an apartment, so I planned a scavenger hunt outside to keep them entertained after the batting cages and wanted the prize to be some hidden money. So on Monday, I pulled out $20 and got 4 $5 bills. Today is Thursday and his last day of school before break. They were having a party at school, and so I pulled a 5 out of my wallet and handed it to him and saw the other 3 $5 bills. I work from home, so went to my room to go back to work. While in there, I heard his friend come inside for 5 minutes before they left together. A little after that, I walk out to get more coffee, and I notice that both my purse and wallet are open, which is not like me, so I go and look and see I only have 1 $5 bill in my purse. I immediately call my son asking if he took $10, which he denies. I say, "Well, if you didn't take it, then your friend must have," and he says no. I feel like I should add that I don't think his friend took the money. He has been in my house lots before and nothing has ever gone missing. My son was with me when I pulled out the money at the store and knew what I had and where it was. My son has also never stolen money, but does sneak extra snacks and cookies and lies a lot about little things, and his lying has been an issue for a while now, and sadly I have caught his lying so much I don't believe him much. My son refuses to say what happened and how the money disappeared. They were the only two in the living room, and I 100% saw it when I handed him the $5 bill. When he got home, we tried to talk about it, but he still says he didn't do it, and neither did his friend. So I told him that his birthday was cancelled, as I feel like he is lying, and I do not trust people in the apartment if he has no clue what happened to my money. A part of me feels like I am overreacting over $10, but I feel like if my son did take it and I let him still have a party, I am setting an example that he can just steal more next time. So am I the asshole? This is a really tough parenting situation. On one hand, I understand the poster's frustration with the lying issue. They mention that their son has a history of lying about little things, and that erosion of trust is real and difficult to deal with. On the other hand, cancelling an entire birthday party over $10, especially when the son is about to turn 13, and this is described as a big milestone that they wanted to make special, feels pretty severe. Let's think about what we know. The money was there, the son and his friend were the only ones in the area, and then the money was gone. The purse and wallet were open. which the poster says is unusual. The son knows about the money because he was there when it was taken out at the store. The poster says they don't think the friend took it, and honestly, that's probably accurate. If nothing has ever gone missing when this friend has been over before, it seems unlikely he would suddenly steal money. That does point more toward the son. But here's the thing, the son is 12, about to turn 13. Kids that age do sometimes make impulsive bad decisions. If he did take the money, and that's still an if, not a certainty, this could be a teachable moment rather than a punishment that cancels a milestone birthday party. The consequence of canceling the party affects not just the relationship between parent and child, but also the son's friendships and social standing. 10 kids were invited. That means 10 kids who are now going to wonder why the party was cancelled. That's public embarrassment for the son, and at 12 or 13, social dynamics are really important to kids. I think there were other approaches the poster could have taken. They could have said, "Look, I believe you took this money. Whether you admit it or not, here's the consequence. You have to earn that $10 back through chores. And we're going to have a serious conversation about honesty." The party could have still happened, but the son would understand there are consequences for his actions and that the trust needs to be rebuilt. Canceling the party feels more like the poster is acting out of anger and frustration about the broader lying issue, rather than responding proportionally to this specific incident. And I get it. When you're dealing with a kid who lies repeatedly, it's exhausting and it's hard to know how to get through to them. But this level of punishment might actually backfire and make the son more resentful rather than more honest. Also, we have to consider the possibility, even if it's small, that the son genuinely didn't take the money. The poster admits the wallet was open, which was unusual. Is it possible the money fell out? Is it possible there's another explanation? If the son truly didn't take it and the party gets cancelled anyway, that's going to create a deep sense of injustice that could damage the relationship for a long time. The poster mentions they're not wealthy and just get by, which makes the $10 feel more significant because every dollar counts. I completely understand that. But the money had already been allocated for the birthday party as prize money, so it's not like this $10 was needed for bills or groceries. It was already birthday budget money. I think the poster might be the asshole in this situation, not because they're trying to address the lying issue, but because the punishment doesn't fit the crime and could have lasting negative impacts on their son's 13th birthday, his friendships, and their parent-child relationship. There were better ways to handle this that would address the behavior without causing collateral damage. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's stories from the AmITheAsshole subreddit. We covered group chat drama, party dress codes, family boundaries, service dog controversies, and tough parenting decisions. Hopefully these stories gave you something to think about or helped you relax for a bit. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And seriously, drop a comment letting me know what subreddit you want to hear stories from next time. I love hearing your suggestions. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.